Hi, good evening, and thank you very much for coming along tonight. Tonight is very special to me, and I'm so glad I get to spend it with some wonderful people here. I've got friends, family, people from school, people from work, and people who I haven't even met before. So whoever you are, thank you so much for coming along tonight. I'm so glad that we get to spend it together. This has been something of a passion project for me for the last 6 months, and I'm so glad that I get to take you on a journey. Voices Unheard came from a deep conviction that every person is precious. Everyone has a story, everyone has a voice, everyone has ears, but not everyone has ears to hear. Welcome to Voices Unheard. My name's Marcus Wong. I'm 19 years old, and I'm a filmmaker and graphic designer and photographer, born and raised right here in Perth. And last year, I packed my bag and moved to Uganda in East Africa to volunteer as a filmmaker, photographer, and graphic designer. And as a bit of a Swiss Army man when it comes to working with children, working at a home that takes care for abandoned children. I went as a solo volunteer for my first international trip without my parents, and it was my first trip to Africa as well. And I was going to live for 3 months with people who I'd never met before. And leaving for Uganda was easily the most frightening thing I've done in my life. The best way I can compare it is to standing on the edge of a cliff and just looking over and not seeing the bottom, and just knowing that 3 months, we've just got to jump. And so just stepping into this void of the unknown, I welcome you to come 9,000 kilometers west and welcome to Uganda. So Uganda is a beautiful, tiny, landlocked country in East Africa. To give you some context, it fits into Australia 32 times, but it has a population of 41 million people. So double the population of Australia in 1/32 of the size of Australia. Basically, it's packed with people. They used to be ruled by the British, and they used to have roads, and they have roads, buildings, and an airport. But since they've got their independence, they don't have the systems in place to maintain this infrastructure. So the capital city, Kampala, has 5 million people in it, and it's mostly made out of dirt roads, and the roads are filled with just potholes. So the government decided to stop people from making more potholes, they'd put in speed bumps. So you go to Kampala, and it has literally the worst traffic in the world. It takes 2 hours to cross the city by car, but if you go by motorbike, it takes just 15 minutes. It's just absolutely insane. And you think the people in Perth here are bad at merging. In Uganda, what you do is you slowly inch out, and you just put your hand up, and eventually they're just going so slow that you'll just push your way in. So they have this taxi system, which is a series of motorbikes, and they're called boda bodas. And basically, it's Uber, but on a motorbike, and you fit 4 people on the back of it. You don't get your Mentos, you don't get your water either. And so I took a photo on my phone of this man carrying a sheet of glass on the back of a boda boda, and it looks like, I think it's the windscreen of like a truck. It's just absolutely insane. And we just see crazy things like that. I saw about 6 kids squished on the back of one, and I kid you not, I saw a coffin on the back of one. And I just hope that it was empty. It would just take up the width of the road, like a car. So in Uganda, it's actually very rare to own a car, and only the wealthy own cars. And on the day that I arrived to Uganda, I was picked up from the airport from the staff at the children's home that I was staying at. And what you can't escape on the drive from the Entebbe airport into Kampala is just the poverty. You're just surrounded by children and mud huts and slums. And as we would drive through, we'd be caught in a traffic jam, and kids would come up to the car, and it was hot, so we had the windows down, and they would beg to you through the window. They were about 5 years old. And it's illegal to give people money to these kids, and you'll get arrested for it. So you just have to ignore them and wind up the windows, and they would press their hands against the window, and you just have to ignore them for long enough until they move on to the next car stuck in the traffic jam. But it's so different in Uganda. I can't stress that enough. There's no social welfare system. If something goes wrong, you can't just go to Centrelink. If you're in a hard financial position, you just have to tough it out. I heard so many stories of just tragedies that happened in families. People getting sick and losing their jobs, children falling sick and the parents having to pay all their wages to pay for their medical costs. Parents dying and leaving a single parent to raise 8 kids. Just absolutely insane stories like that. But even worse than there being no social support is that there's actually no sympathy from the community. You see, if something happened to me here, I would have the support of friends and family and the surrounding community. But in Uganda, everyone has their own struggle, that there is just no sympathy from the community. Some of you know the history of Uganda and the story of a man named Idi Amin, the dictator that killed hundreds of thousands of people, which led to a civil war which killed hundreds of thousands more. And because of this, Uganda has the second youngest population in the world. Half the population is under 15 years old because so many of the people were killed. See, they're a country recovering from a dark history, and they've got no fathers to guide them. One of the statistics that frightened me is that 1.4 million people in Uganda are living with HIV, and 49% of the children there are taking antiretrovirals to treat HIV. And the aftermath of this is orphans, just so many orphans. And 2.5 million orphans is the best guess which they've given, which means there's more orphans in Uganda than there are people in Perth. And this brings me to the first documentary which I shot there, which I'd love to show you tonight. It comes from a small rural village and a man with a dream. Enjoy.
My name is Moses. I'm the director of Boya Mission School. When I was still studying in high school in this community, I realized most of the kids didn't go to school because their parents were not able to pay school fees. Some of the kids didn't have clothes on their backs. That really touched me, and it motivated me to come up with an idea of starting a school. I didn't start mission school right away because I didn't have what it takes to start it. I didn't have money, I didn't have time. You need a team. You need people that can help you put that vision into place. After my high school, I was employed. I was able to secure some savings. I asked my mom to help me, and she was not willing to help me because by then she was thinking of retiring. I remember I asked her that, "Mom, can you please help me teach these kids?" A few weeks after talking to her, she called me and she was like, "I'm willing to help." I was so happy, and immediately I withdrew my savings and bought some wood that we can possibly use to put this temporary structure. Me and my mom, we moved in the community and collected these poor children that cannot afford school fees.
My name's Sarah Tibamwenda Adieri, and I'm working as a headmistress of this school. In most cases, you find that most of the children in this village, most of them are orphans. They have no parents. Some of them stay at their grandmummies, and they don't know what family planning is. You can find in a family about 8 children, and you find that the woman cannot afford to pay school fees for these children.
In 2011, we started with 25 kids, and 6-7 years down the road, we do have 150 children. I'm so excited about this. With 6 teachers, we teach science, social studies, mathematics, and English. This temporary structure of ours is 6 years of age. It is the structure that we started with. So hopefully in the future, we'll try to change it and build permanent solid structures. The challenge that we do have right now is our budget is really tight. It cannot feed the number of the kids that we do have. Most of the kids do not pay anything. We use our money to pay the teachers, to buy food for these kids. We just buy stuff for them, special clothes, shoes.
I found it very difficult to pay the teachers because the money was coming in very little. That is, for example, buying chalk, that is scholastic materials, chalk, charts so that children can learn, and then books. I found it very difficult because money was not coming in. And you could find parents calling just there, complaining that we don't have money, what can we do? And by the time I came to send our children for school fees, some of them could refuse to go home. They kept on crying that for us, we can't go back home because there is no money. So they kept on crying and we had to leave them in the school. So that is the main problems we really faced. In most cases, Moses found it very difficult because he could use his little pocket money to pay for the teachers, And sometimes you could buy maize flour because some of them could not even afford to buy a flour for porridge. Standard-wise, we are doing very well because we are following the school curriculum very well.
The plans that we do have as Boa Mission School is to get out of this temporary structure to a solid, permanent structure. But we do not have any idea where the funding will come from. The ultimate goal of Boa Mission School is to educate the children, to put their skills to good use, to help themselves. Yeah, because that's one of the challenges that we do have in Africa as well. That most of the people are not educated, and they do not have the knowledge and skills at hand that can help them do something. And that's what we want to avoid.
I thank God who made us to see this vision or to start this mission. And what I know is that He's going to help us to see to eat that we are successful. Yeah. Because actually we are really bad off. And the children are really bad off.
We do have programs whereby we allow people to come in and volunteer. If you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a musician, we welcome teachers, we welcome engineers to come and be a part of this. For more information, find us at missiontripsuganda.com.
Yeah, so that's a local primary school in Uganda in a town called Buwoya. And I shot that documentary with that man called Moses. And he was actually the man who picked me up from the children's home and drove me from the airport. And he works part-time as a driver for the children's home. He works as the director of the school, and he also works part-time running a shop selling snacks for people. And the school is free for the very poor and very cheap for those who are a little better off. And sometimes when they would struggle financially is when lots of kids came and they'd have more mouths to feed. And Moses would use his own pocket money and the money he earns from being a member of one of the staff members at the children's home to pay for the staff wages. And it's really just a labor of love from Moses. The staff earn 200,000 Ugandan shilling every month, which is the equivalent of 72 Australian dollars. As a regular routine, the children have to walk a kilometre to fetch water from a well so that they can cook, they can clean, drink, and go to the toilet with. And I've got a photo of the toilet there, which is pretty much just a square hole cut into some concrete. The classrooms are all made of wood, and they were built by Moses and his friends. And they have no doors, the floor is dusty, the whole structure's falling over at the moment because of the seasonal rains. And sickness is one of the big issues, and malaria is one of the big killers in Uganda and across Africa, which is why they say mosquitoes are the most dangerous animals in the world, because they carry malaria. So many of the kids live in these unsecure houses, like you can see here, and so there's just no protection from mosquitoes, and they have no mosquito nets, and lots of them get very ill. And the most dangerous thing that would happen to me whilst I was in Uganda is in the morning when I would go to the toilet, because all the mosquitoes overnight would sit on the water of the toilet, and when you would go to the toilet, they'd all rise up and come at you towards your face. So you'd be peeing, and with one hand, you'd be fending off these malaria mosquitoes which are coming at you. And I came back and I was telling one of the youth guys I lead, and he said, it's like a game. You got to shoot them down before they get to you, like some sort of upside-down space invaders. One of the questions I get asked is if I got sick whilst I was on the trip, and I'd like to show you this photo here. And so I still don't know what happened to my hands, but about halfway into the 3 months whilst I was there, I had 2 bumps appear on my right hand, and they were really itchy, and they would hurt when I closed my fist. And then they started to spread. More came on my right hand, then my left hand, and then onto my feet. And I couldn't sleep at night because they had become these itching, weeping blisters. So not knowing what it was, and not knowing how reliable the medical system was in Uganda, I consulted a trusty friend, Google Doctor. and to find out what was happening to my hands, and found out that small little insects had laid eggs under my skin, and now 6 weeks later they were all beginning to hatch out of my skin. Thank you, Google Doctor. So it totally freaked me out, and I quarantined myself from everyone, and I went to go see a real doctor, and he had no idea what it was either, and just suggested I take some antihistamine, and thankfully a few weeks later, I found out I do not have insects under my skin, and they went away, and then all the skin on my hands just peeled off. One of the places I'd like to introduce you to is a rural village called Kachiri. We would go here regularly to hand out old clothes and toys that the children's home didn't use anymore. And a lot of these people in this village, they make their living by agriculture. Some of them are so bad off that the money they make is, they don't make any money, they just eat the food which they grow. And some of them who are better off, they will make a small amount of money from what they grow. But as technology and transport gets better, the income they get gets cheaper and cheaper, and they get less and less. Even then, if the rain is bad, what are they going to eat? Where's their income coming from? And so many of them are uneducated, and their kids are uneducated, and the cycle continues. And by the way, a term at school costs $7. I visited an elderly widow who was living at home by herself, and she only spoke the native language, Lugandan, and so we couldn't communicate to each other. But the one thing I got from her, and that was translated across, was that she was just so grateful for our company, and just to come and say hello meant so much to her, because she lives by herself, because her whole family has passed away. And when we left her, we walked out through her backyard, and we found 6 tombstones in her garden from the family members who had all just passed away, and she buried them. We met another lady who had twins, and when we saw her, we saw them crying and climbing all over her, and she was clearly having a hard time taking care of them. And when we asked her where the father was, she said that he divorced her when she gave birth to twins, because he decided that he didn't want that responsibility and he couldn't take care of 2 kids at once. So he divorced her, he ran away and remarried just because of something that she couldn't control. And the lady pointed her finger just over the field and she said, "That's his house there." Just absolutely crazy. So that's an introduction to Uganda and some of the things that are going on in that country. But now I get to talk a bit about the children's home, which I stayed at in my time there. And this place is a place that's very, very dear to me now. And it's a children's home. It's the children's home which we're raising funds for tonight. And we'll be collecting donations at the end of this evening. This children's home is called Rafiki African Ministries, and Rafiki means friend in the Swahili language, and it says to the name of the monkey in The Lion King. Rafiki looks after abandoned children and gives them a home to live in, food to eat, someone to love them, and someone to be like their parents, as well as sending them to school and caring for them. My role was as a volunteer at the children's home. It was just to play with the kids, to be their friend, bathe them, feed them, do their laundry, change their nappies for 3 months. And then whilst they were sleeping, I would do some of the work for my film and graphic design and photography, editing them up. So that was my life for 3 months whilst in Africa. And I made a short video of what one day at Rafiki is like, and it's called A Day at Rafiki. Enjoy.
Good morning. We've got children to bathe. Good morning. Hey. You're waiting for me?
Yeah.
Hey.
I'm
Hey.
Let's take a picture.
It's a video.
Jesus Christ was born on Christmas Day. I can hear the angels sing. A king was born today.
We gotta bathe now. Who's peed the bed? I can smell it. Oh, it was you, Max? Okay, we'll wash you first, Max. It was you, Andrew?
Yes.
You wet the bed as well?
A king was born today.
Is it wet?
Forever.
Okay, I don't want to touch it. Hey!
Uncle Marcus. Uncle Marcus.
I can hear you all the way from my bedroom.
Uncle Marcus. Hello.
Whoa, don't kick each other. Don't kick each other. Whoa! Someone's gonna get hurt real soon. What? Make a what? Say that again? What? Whoa, what a jump. Whoa, that was close to Abby's head. Why is there a shoe on a stick? Oh. Okay, do you want to be picked up? Oh, now you're hitting me. Favor, did you push Max? You what? You what, sorry? Oh no. Junior's nose is hot property. Okay. Do you want me to carry you? Uh-oh, Peace is crying now. Let's see, double-handed. Oh. Oh. I can't carry 3, Jeremiah. Isaac, I can't carry 4 people. Junior doesn't want to share. Okay, let's go ask him. Can Isaac have a go on the motorbike? Oh, Junior, can you share the motorbike? No. Can Hope go on? What's wrong, Jeremiah? You want me to carry you? You got it! Yeah, good work, Isaac. I'm being pulled in 2 directions. Oh, no. Oh, it's gonna rain pretty soon. So currently working on some designs and the power has gone. These are the original designs which I was given and remade it into something that looks like this. My room is flooding! Lunchtime for the kids. Dropped it, but I caught it. What are we about to do?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yes.
We're about to bathe you. We're about to get washed with cold water on a cold day. Alright, we're getting ready for dinner. You have a look at this. The wet floors. The white. Oh my word. We're gonna need to change you, Abby. Can you video me dancing with the kids? Get that Where did my phone go? It's 8 o'clock, kids are in bed, end of my day. Good night.
There you go, 3 months in Africa. Every day, non-stop. Love those kids so much. So when I, sorry. So when I first arrived at Rafiki, they were in a circle and they were all dancing. And they would do this every night without fail. And they would stand in a circle with African drums, and what they would do is they would call your name out and you'd have to jump into the center and do a solo dance for them. And so I arrived at about 5 p.m. and I rocked up and these kids were doing it. And I got there and they said, Uncle Marcus. And so their first impression of me was I had to jump in the center and do this dance for them. And I'm still in my plain clothes and my bag is still in the van. And so that was their first impression of me. And the staff said, everyone say hello to your new uncle. He'll be staying here for the next 3 months. So they all just came towards me and they just climbed over me, were pulling my hair, pulling my cheeks and just hugging me and just trying to find out who I was. And there was this boy there, and his name was Hudson. And I knew exactly who he was because he had a big strip of masking tape across his chest that said Hudson in big capital letters in crayon. And he said to me, come on, it's time to go bathe the boys. And so I walked into the house, and Hudson leads me up the stairs to the boys' room. And I'm just greeted by 7 naked African boys jumping up and down, saying, bathe me, bathe me. And they're hugging me, and they're pulling on my arms and my clothes. And I'm still in my plain clothes, like bag in the van. And I'm like, is this okay? Like, I need to go check with the staff. And they said, yep, it's fine. And so Hudson, who's 11 years old, normally bathes the kids. So he was the one who trained me. So I had to fill up a bucket of water, and we would put a sponge in, and we'd wash the kids with that. And so I'm now a professional at washing 10 African boys with a bucket of water. And I was just so terrible at the first time because I didn't know their names, and they're all naked, and they all look the same. And so I was just so terrible and so slow at it. And I just looked at Hudson by the end of it, and I was just like, I totally failed, didn't I? And he just looked at me and said, you'll learn. He's 11. So that was my introduction to the kids' home, and it took me about a week to learn all of the names of the 21 kids that stay there. In the morning, I'd walk the kids 5 years old and older to school, and we'd homeschool the younger kids there. We'd play games, and we'd play with giant blocks of Lego, we'd play soccer and basketball and play with water balloons, and a lot of dancing. And the kids are really good at dancing in Africa, and every night we would have this dance-off with African drums. And there's this little guy, Jacob, and he's 3 years old, and he has a signature move, which I'd like to show you here. Absolute classic. And so Jacob would do that every night. He calls it the 180, which is just great. Every night the 180. And so for meals at the children's home, we would eat a lot of rice and beans. We'd have pork and chicken and beef. And there was this chili oil, which I fell in love with. It was just so nice. And myself and another staff member, we'd always put it on our food. And there was one day we were putting it on our food, and one of the kids saw us. And she's a girl called Favor, and she's 3 years old. And she was like, I want some of that. We were like, nuh-uh, Favor, you're 3. Like, this is like really hot. Like, this isn't good for you. She was like, no, I really want it. And she started like whining and like bringing herself like almost to tears. And we were like, okay. So we put a bit on her food, and she just wailed. And so sometimes with kids, there's just no winning. On the night of Christmas Eve, whilst I was there, we had this really big dinner, this big cook-up of pork and rice, which is always the best when you're there. And after dinner, I went upstairs to go say goodnight to the boys and to read them a book. And I found them all in the bathroom brushing their teeth, and there was no one in the bedroom. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect time to play like the Santa Claus prank. And so I went into the room, and I went under one of the bunk beds, one of the triple bunk beds, and I hid under there, and the lights were off. And they came in, I could hear them mucking around just playing, and I was like, this is going to be so good. I'm just going to jump out and do this old Santa Claus thing late at night. I don't know what the plan is, but I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to do it. And then they're just playing, and they're mucking around, and one of them spills something on the floor, like their drink, and it splashes everywhere, and it's all on the floor quite close to me. And I was like, oh, what the heck? Like, they shouldn't be bringing their drinks up here. Like, they're supposed to have it downstairs. And I looked at the liquid on the floor, and it was a bit chunky. And I was like, what is that? And it started to smell. And so I slid out of the bed, and what is he doing under there? And this is what I saw. So little Max decided to open a present on Christmas Eve, and just all over the bed and on the floor. That's him there, Max. And yeah, so we had to change the beds and get everything ready. I'm pretty sure Santa doesn't have that job. Anyway, next morning, Christmas morning, I go up to say good morning to them. I found out Jacob's thrown up as well, another boy. It turns out they just overate the night before. But not only that, he peed the bed as well. And it stank the room. It was like 2 lots of warm vomit and a pee as well. And they're on triple bunk beds, and they've got foam mattresses. And foam's not that pee resistant. And so if in the past if there's a kid on the top bunk and he pees, it goes through. When I arrived at Rafiki, there were 2 other volunteers there. There was one from America called Hannah, and another from Northern Ireland called Neve. And when they left, there were 5 weeks in the middle of my trip where I was a solo volunteer, and it was just myself working with a lot of the native Ugandan staff. And easily those 5 weeks alone, being the only volunteer there, were easily the hardest 5 weeks of my life. I found myself having to wrestle with really deep questions and issues of social justice and morality and understanding even just my purpose in the world. And I was struggling to process all this because I had no one to debrief with who also had Western eyes. With the Ugandan staff, as they're native, they're all quite accustomed and almost desensitized to this. So I had this deep internal battle, and it was definitely a dark and quite a lonely time. You know, you would see these states of poverty, and at times you just couldn't believe what you're seeing. It would just be insane to see that in Perth. And I thought, this is so weird what I'm seeing. But on reflection, I realized that actually all of us here in this room, we're actually the minority. We are the weird ones. The people who live in poverty, they're actually the majority in the world. The average income is actually not that high. And we are the weird ones. And that was just a total reversal of everything that I thought that was normal. So I found myself in this dark headspace of processing all these things. And what I realized was I actually really missed Australian humor. And that's this self-deprecating humor. And a lot of the jokes I made and my sarcasm and my ironic comments would go over the heads of the staff and a lot of the kids. So it was a dark time with no humor. And there was one morning when I went outside just to read a book. And a little girl who was 5 years old called Ruth came up, and that's a photo of her there. And she came, she just wanted to say hello and sit on my lap, and we read a book together. And so I just asked her, I said, Ruth, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, she goes, a toilet. I said, what? And she giggles, and she goes, a cockroach. And she just giggles, and she goes, no, an elephant's bum. And I said, Ruth, I was like, what do you mean? And she's just 5, but she just understood this self-deprecating, cheeky Australian humor. And me and Ruth, we got on really well. There was another time when I walked past the boys' bathroom, and there's a boy there called James, and he's 6 years old, and he's butt naked in the bathroom getting ready to bathe, and he's peeing in the toilet. And what I see is he's standing at the toilet bowl, and he's peeing, and then he slowly starts backing up. He's trying to see how far can I go and still get it in the bowl. And then he runs out of pressure, and he scoots back to the bowl really quickly. So, man, James, you're going places. There's this another kid there called Isaiah, and he's 2 years old. There's a photo of him there, and he's just this huge, chunky boy. And he was notorious for stealing other kids' foods and for doing the most dramatic cry, which I've got a photo of there. He just tilts his head back and wails. And he was also notorious for doing the biggest poos. And they were so big that they would go through the nappy. Sometimes we'd be out in the garden playing, and you could just smell that something was off. And so my first instinct was to look at him. And I would notice that his pants were hanging really low, like they were carrying a big package. And there were also flies buzzing around him. And it became such a big problem that we had to start toilet training him. And he just hated being on the toilet. And he would refuse to poo when he was on there. So sometimes we'd leave him there for a good half an hour. And you could just hear him crying, and he wouldn't want to poo. And the second you take him off and you put a nappy on him, he poos. And it just goes out of the nappy and goes on your hands and on the floor, and it's just totally gross. One time we picked him up and he just peed straight on the floor. It's like, oh man. I've got a photo of him on my shoulders. And he was a boy who just loved to be picked up. And if you look really closely at his face, he actually looks quite familiar. I feel like I've seen him before. Just a bit of a skeptical African boy. Just a classic meme. And you can't make this stuff up. It's so good. So the first video I made called A Day at Rafiki, it's always people's favorite whenever I show it to them. But the problem is I had so much footage that didn't make that first cut, and I really wanted to show it to people. And so what I've done is I've taken a collection of footage from the whole 3 months, and I've cut it into another video. And so it's called Another Day at Rafiki. Enjoy.
This bed smells like pee. Morning, Junior. How are you?
Mine.
Good morning. How are you?
Aku makan.
Yeah?
Good
Good morning, Jackie. Hey, good morning, Max. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine.
You're fine.
Picture.
Do you want the camera?
Here comes James. Woohoo. Adams. Wow. My name is Hanson. My favorite color is red.
Okay, Junior, you
Oh, it's the color of the blood of Jesus. Now, what is your best color? Oh,
This color, wait.
wow. What's your favorite color?
Color blue.
Wow. There's Uncle Marcus, who's been here for so long. Here he's giving them clothing.
Will this one fit, Max?
Yeah, it will fit here. His favorite spot is going to church. He's angry. He's so angry. He'll kill someone easily. Cheese. What's the name? What's your favorite food, Andrew?
Chicken and also rice.
Wow, Tina is excited of that.
Hey, how are you? Yeah? How are you? Ah, what are you eating? Breakfast. What is breakfast?
Sandwich.
Sandwich. It's nice? Yes! I'm hoping to capture Isaiah stealing food. Don't cover it. Isaiah! Isaiah, you're done with your food. He's got all these clothes to fold. Hello. So we've made a slip and slide for about $12. Amaya.
Let's miss that video.
Is it fine? Let me hold it.
Are you cold?
Yes.
Hudson.
What's clean my face? Wow, show me your muscles. Show me your muscles.
Muscles? You can be strong like this too. I believe in you.
too.
Whoa, big muscles. Whoa, careful, you'll pop something. What are we doing, Hudson?
We're playing water balloons.
We're playing water balloons? Are you ready to win? No. Why not?
I'm ready to splash you this one. Can I?
No.
2, 3, go!
Wow! Me!
Amazing.
Isaiah, I don't think you're part of the game, okay? Go! That's not allowed.
Small one. One,
Oh, you're not gonna do it if I was you?
2, go.
Whole thing. Whole thing. Yep.
But you vomited some water.
I want to tell you some of the stories of the children which I met at the kids' home, and specifically how these children arrived at the kids' home. One day in Uganda, we got a call from the Ugandan police saying that there was a girl who was lost, and they asked if we could take care of her while she was lost. And we assumed she was lost because she was well-dressed, had a nice haircut, and nice shoes. And normally when someone gets lost, Rafiki expects to take care of them for just a few days, because if they're lost, then the parents will get in touch with the police, trace down their steps, and then find them eventually. And so we met this little 6-year-old girl called Aisha, and so we took her back to Rafiki, and we gave her a tour of the children's home, and she just absolutely loved it. She just suddenly found herself with 20 new friends and a yellow guy to play with. And we were expecting about 2 days before she would go back to her family, because obviously they get in touch really quickly. And she stayed at Rafiki, just loved it, but then 2 days passed, 3 days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks, and still no signs of her parents. And so we're in contact with the police, and there's just no news, and no one's come back to look for Aisha. So we finally work out the school which she went to and which town she was from, and it was 30 minutes away from where the police found her in Kampala. So it was really confusing, but what we did was we took a photo of her, and we took it to that village, and we were putting it up on the walls. And then the mayor came out, and they said, I know that girl, I know her mum, and I know where she lives as well, let's go visit her. So we went to the mum, and we said, hi, we have your daughter, and she's staying at a home for abandoned children. Did you know this? And she said, no. And so we took the mum with us, and we went to go visit the dad, and he was 30 minutes away from where Aisha was found. And we went to the father, and we said, hey, did you know that your daughter Aisha is staying at a home for abandoned children? And he said, no. So something is not right here. So we took both of them to the police station, and we sat them down to work out what the story was. It turns out that the parents had split, and the mother had taken care of Aisha. But she decided to let Aisha go and visit her dad for some time over Christmas. However, the mum didn't call the dad in advance to let him know that she was coming to bring Aisha over. So she goes to the dad's house, doesn't find the dad there, leaves Aisha there, and she says, just wait here, dad will be here soon. Turns out the dad's on a 2-week holiday, and so Aisha's just left there, and she goes walking. The neighbors see that she's missing. She goes to the police, and then from the police to Rafiki. So the mum has no idea that she's not the dad's, and the dad has no idea that she's not the mum's. So neither of them have got any idea where she is. And so it's just a totally messy situation. And so the dad was there with his second wife, and he was like, who's Aisha? And more importantly, who's this other lady? And so it's just this totally messy situation. And tangled within this own couple's problems was this little girl called Aisha. But now she's back with her mother. Rafiki works to resettle the kids with their parents. And Rafiki will continue to monitor her, her school grades, and financially support that family up until Aisha graduates university or a tertiary equivalent. So it's just a really awesome outcome from just a tragic mess that this girl Aisha was caught in the middle of. Another story is of a boy who I met called Ivan, and he's 6 years old. And I met him whilst I was there, and he arrived at the children's home with his sister, and he was only around a year old, quite young, but he was found, him and his sister were found terribly malnourished and on the brink of death. And they were found locked in a house, alone, without food or water, and they'd been there for a few days, and the neighbors heard them crying, and so they broke in the house, and they found them there, and they took them to the police. The police took them to Rafiki, and then Rafiki rushed them to the hospital because they were terribly sick and malnourished. And on the way to the hospital, the sister passed away in their arms. And so Ivan was left now with a deceased sister and living at Rafiki with no family. And whilst he was there, he's grown up not knowing where his sister is. But whilst I was there, I met him and he was 6 years old. And the dad got in contact with Rafiki, and he said that he wanted to meet Ivan. And this was a total break in what was normal, and we weren't expecting it at all. And so what happened is we took Ivan and we took him on a day visit to go visit his dad. And when we arrived at the dad's property, a stranger came out to meet us to check that there were no police with us, because the dad had this deep sense of guilt and shame and was afraid that he'd be arrested because the sister had passed away. But Ivan went for his day visit, and they got along so well, and then he came back to Rafiki and stayed there for a few weeks, and then he went for a week visit. And whilst he was on his week visit, we get a call from Ivan and the dad, and they were saying that him and the dad get along so well, can he stay forever? And we said yes. We checked the place, we checked that he was getting school and education, and it was just fantastic. So Ivan's now with his family, and they're now a happy family unit, and the dad was originally just so ashamed of himself, but now he's just learning to be the best dad that he never was. I'd like to show you another photo of two kids who were found in the slums, and their names are Praise and Isaac. You see Praise on the left and Isaac on the right. And Isaac is a boy in a dress, and I met them whilst they were at Rafiki. Praise is 2 years old, and her brother Isaac is 4 years old. And they were found in a poor slum in Kampala. And their story was that their mother was a victim of a scam. They used to live in a rural area, and then a pastor, obviously a false pastor, said to them, if you move to Kampala and tell people that I've been healing people, I'll pay you to do this. So she did this. She was uprooted, moved into Kampala, didn't get as much money as she expected. So she's dislocated, left their home, left with less money than expected, and she just no longer could take care of these two kids. So Rafiki took them in to take care of them. When Isaac came, he was very violent and he couldn't speak English. He would be hitting other children and staff and volunteers. He didn't want to bathe, and he couldn't speak English. He was very protective of Praise, and if she was crying, he would chase down the staff and he'd ask, like, why is my sister crying? Well, I've taken a few photos of them today, and this is what they look like now. Praise has started speaking English whilst I was there. She started calling out my name, which is very special to me. And Isaac speaks very good English now. And I could never imagine him being violent or hitting anyone, because he's just such a good boy now. But he's about to start going to school and stop the whole homeschooling program at Rafiki. And they quickly became two of my favorite kids because they were just so good to photograph. And Rafiki is working to get their mother in a financially stable position where she can then take care of the kids once more. However, the mum's been trying to run away and hide from Rafiki, and has actually changed her phone number 5 times so that we can't get in contact with her. But one day we managed to track her down and get her to come into Rafiki to actually visit the kids and to see them once again, and hopefully get her to take care of them again. And when she came in, I took a photo of her, and she started crying whilst I took this photo of her as she holds Praise and Isaac. And she definitely holds just a great deal of guilt and shame. And she couldn't speak a word of English, but I got to sit down with her with my laptop and show her the photos that I'd taken of Praise and Isaac, and just show her how beautiful they were and how precious they are, and just the awesome things that Rafiki's been doing for them. It was such a special moment just to be able to use art and photography just to connect with her, how precious her children are. And now Rafiki's working with her to get her into a financially stable position. I want to share the story with you of a little boy called Jeremiah, and this is another kid who's one of my favorites, and we got along so well. And this kid just wanted to be held. This was the kid who got knocked over on the motorbike. He's 2 years old, and he was found in the slums of Kampala by himself as he was lost. So Rafiki took him in, and again, expecting the parents to be in touch quite quickly. He had nice shoes, a nice haircut, nice clothes. He had his ears pierced, and so it was confusing why he was lost, and we figured that the parents would come soon. But when I arrived in November at Rafiki, he'd been there for 4 months, so obviously something wasn't right. So Rafiki was advertising through social media, the TV, the radio, the news, just trying to find the parents. And man, I just fell in love with this boy and his smile. And I was definitely planning to go back to Uganda one day and to see all these kids again. And obviously, because he's only 2, I couldn't talk to him. But I was just so excited to be able to go back and visit Uganda and see this boy again. And it was on my final day before I flew out to come back to Perth that we got notified by the police that they'd located the mother and that he's going to go back to his family. And it was just such a bittersweet moment for me that I just had all these plans of seeing him grow up, start to speak English and being able to talk and play with him and kick a ball with him. And then it was almost like that was taken away, but it was so bittersweet because he's going to be with his family, which is totally awesome, but I'm not going to see this guy again. And so that was on my last day. And I just got to pick him up before I left and just got to hold him in my arms and just put his head against my chest, and I just got to cry. And it was just such a special moment to me. And I miss that guy so much. And as he grows up, he'll probably forget me, but he definitely has a special place in my heart. I told you earlier about Hudson, and you would have seen him in the video. Just this cheeky, street smart 11-year-old boy he became my best friend. And we bonded so closely together because he's the oldest boy there, and the next oldest boy was 6 years old. So Hudson didn't have many older boy friends who we could play with. And so he just wanted to be with me and to wrestle and to have a good time. And one day, on my first day there, he asked if I knew Kung Fu or Bruce Lee and things like that. And we just formed this really close bond, one like of 2 brothers or even like a father and a son. And we would make games and we'd play together. And if it was a really good day, he'd call it a BDE, which is best day ever. He wants to be a science teacher when he grows up, or whatever other job can get him a lot of money. So one night I took him outside and we got to sit under the stars, and I started teaching him some of the stuff I learned in high school, just about the earth and the stars. And I put up on my phone Google Maps, and I showed him Australia and how big it was, and Uganda and how small it is, and showed him how far away it was. And I was even showing him the street view and how you could see the children's home in Uganda and all the nearby places. And he said, "Oh, can you go to Australia and show me your house?" And I just had this just deep sense of shame that I didn't want to show this guy my house because it's so nice, my house, compared to what this guy has. It just felt like an insult. And I think Hudson's been on a search for a father figure for a long time. And for myself, to be able to step into that role in just a small way is just something I'm so proud to have done. It's one of my greatest privileges. And on the last day, I got to walk him to school, and we just held hands on the way there. And we both knew that it was the last time we'd see each other. At his school gate, which was the last place where we'd see each other, there's a corner which you have to walk around. And once he goes around that corner, that's it. We don't see each other. So we had our final hug, and I just got to tell him, I was like, "Bro, I love you. I'm gonna miss you so much." And we hugged, and he slowly he walked into school, into the corner, and he stopped, and he just turned around, and he looked at me, and he just lowered his head, just so sad, and he just walked around the corner, like at the departure gate of an airport. And I got back to Rafiki, and I found this waiting for me. It was a letter that Hudson wrote, and he painted it together, and he's written Uncle Marcus on the front with paint, and then you open it up, and he's written this huge letter for me. And one of the things he wrote in it just says, I will cry when you go. I will cry whenever I remember you. And it was just moved me so much that in 3 months, me and this guy, we just became like father and son. And I just miss him so much, and I will be back to Uganda to see him once more, I'm definitely sure. Another story is of 3 siblings who arrived at my time at Rafiki. I was there for about a month, and then these 3 kids called Charles, John, and Winnie arrived, and they were aged 3 months, 3 years old, and 6 years old. And these kids came straight from the slums, and it was my privilege to give them their first bath in quite a while. And they smelled awful, and the water scrubbing off their skin was just brown. And the story is that they were handed over to the police and then to Rafiki because they found their mum in the slums strangling them. The mother had HIV, which affected her mental health and it caused her to attack them. So the people separated them, took the kids to the police station as well as the mother, and thankfully all the kids are at Rafiki and they're safe and they're all clear from HIV. And Rafiki is now working with the police to try track down the mother and to get her medical treatment and to get her into a sane mental position and then a job so she can earn income to take care of the kids once more. But it's going to be a long and expensive time that this goes over, possibly 6 or 7 years before the mother's ready to take them back. And I took this photo of Charles, and it's one of my favorite photos, and it's of Charles holding his 3-month-old sister, Winnie. And he cares for John and Winnie and all the other younger kids so well, as he didn't have a strong father figure or even a mother figure as he grew up. So instead of going to school, he would take care of these kids, and he had to play this role of the parent at 6 years old. And he has the best manners of any child who you'll ever meet. He would wait for me to finish my food, and then he would collect it and take my plate to the kitchen and to wash it. And these three siblings couldn't speak English, so talking to them was hard, as I only learned a few words in Lugandan. But when it was time for me to leave, I had to sit Charles down, and I said, hey, I've been here the whole time you're here, but I'm about to leave, and I'm not coming back. And he didn't understand me, so I asked Hudson. I said, Hudson, can you talk to Charles and tell him that I'm leaving? Hudson tells him, and Charles laughs. He thinks he's joking. And then I had to sit down seriously with Charles and say, no, Charles, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. And he looked at Hudson and saw how sad Hudson was as well. And he got it. And I just felt like I was just crushing this guy's heart. And it was just so heartbreaking to leave. Just gave him a big hug and just told him that, say goodbye to him. You know, I said at the start that going from Perth to Uganda was the hardest thing I've done in my life. Coming from Uganda back to Perth was way, way harder. Now, I've been focused quite strongly on Uganda in Africa this whole time, but what I want to do is just broaden our scope, just to get a view of the world. To give you some perspective, the average monthly income in the world is about $1,600 a month, which makes the average income around the world about $50 a day. And that's the average. Some people live on just $2 a day. And there's this incredible website called Dollar Street. And what it does, it imagines the whole world on a scale of rich to poor. And what you do is you put in your monthly income, your household's monthly income, and you see where you sit on this scale. And you can explore the world and see how much other people are making. You can see their homes, their beds, their kitchens, their toilets, and see what the world is like. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take a tour and to break and to pop this first world bubble. And so what I want to do before we start is just get in your head, what is the household you live in? What's the monthly income that household has? So first, have that in your mind, and we're going to take a look at some of the homes around the world. So first up, Myanmar. This is their home, $195 a month. Bolivia, $180 a month. Bangladesh, $175 a month. Philippines, $93 a month. India, $80. Haiti, $39. Malawi, $30. And India, $29. I'll show you some kitchens now. China, $578 a month. Philippines, $228. Bolivia, $180. Bangladesh, $85. Malawi, $30. Some beds. China, $578. Myanmar, $195. Philippines, $93. And India, $31. So I'm going to talk a bit about money and giving now. And this is a free event because I didn't want money to be something that turns people away from coming to hear these stories. But we're here for more than just stories that make us feel good or to be touched by a small moment and be motivated to do our small part in the fight for social justice. I don't just want your money. I'm asking for something more expensive, and that's your life. See, I can guilt trip you and I can get you to give once. But if I motivate you through art and through stories and to see the preciousness of every individual, no matter how far away they are, it's more than your money you give. It's a life of love that you give. You see, since arriving back in Perth in February, I think I've been going somewhat insane. After seeing everything in Uganda, I have these deep convictions and a deep sense of loneliness in seeing the world totally different to how other people see. But I was worried that I'd get this sense of judgment of people who haven't seen what I've seen. But I wasn't filled with that because I can't judge the way you live your life because you haven't seen what I've seen. See, the more that you see, the more morally accountable you are to act upon what you've seen. And it's been a lonely few months wrestling with how to live my life in light of what I've seen. But now that you've seen too, I'm calling you to moral accountability as well. See, one morning when I was getting the boys changed, that little boy Max, he came up to me because his shorts wouldn't fit him because he's so small. So I went to the drawer and I found only one pair of shorts that would fit him. And they were a pair of black Nike sports shorts with the little swoosh on the front of it. And I gave them to Max and I said, Max, these will fit you. And he said, I don't want these ones. So I checked the drawer again and we tried a few more on and they didn't fit him. So I came back to the black Nike sports shorts and I gave them back to him and I said, Max, you're going to have to wear this pair. They're the only one that fit you. And he said, I don't want this pair. And I said, you put it on first. And so he put it on and it fit him perfectly. But he didn't want it. So he started jumping up and down to try to get them to fall off his hips and say that they were too big. And I said, Max, they're fitting. And he started crying. And I said, Max, you've got to stop crying. I said, don't you know how cool you look in your Nike sports shorts? See, I've been to villages where kids have filthy shorts. Villages where kids have shorts with holes in it, covered in dust and in mud. Some kids, you know, Max, they don't even have shorts. They don't even have a shirt. Their house is falling apart. You know, Max, you need to be so grateful for what you have. You've got this pair of black Nike sports shorts. Max, you need to be thankful for what you have. I'm such a hypocrite for saying that. How can I say that to an orphan when I have so much? See, our culture tells us to earn more money, to be more successful, get richer. And I arrived in Uganda and I realized how rich I was. Then after a few weeks, I realized just how poor I was. See, because being rich is not about money, it's about character. And the richest people I met in Uganda had nothing. See, if everything you do is done out of love, there will always be someone needing your love. You might not make much money, but you will be rich. So we're coming to the end of this evening, and as you leave, we'll be collecting cash donations at the door as we exit from buckets on either side of the door. So please stay, meet some people, come ask me if you've got a question about the photo which you've got, and just enjoy each other's company. But I'm going to finish off with one last story. And this is my favorite photo, which I took in my 3 months. And it's a photo of Favour watching the sunset over Kampala. And I like to look at this picture and think that she's dreaming of a better Africa, a better world and a brighter future, one beyond the darkness and the oppression that the hand of life has dealt her, her sister Abigail, and her mother. Dreaming of a future where there's hope for all kids, dreaming of a future where every child has a home, a future where every child knows that they're precious, and a future where voices are heard. Thank you very much for everyone coming along. Please donate generously. It's been my privilege to be able to share with you tonight, and I've loved every second of it. Thank you very much, and good night.